All right. Hi. My name is Jeff Phillips. I'm the Environmental Health Supervisor with Winnebago County Health Department. For this presentation, we will be talking a little bit about the role of the public health sanitarian, and especially as the sanitarian's role deals with inspection and licensing of food and beverage establishments. Really, the environmental health sanitarian is the person that's charged with protecting people from all types of environmental exposures that could cause human illness and death. What we're interested in doing is making sure that the interaction between the environment and the person in that environment doesn't cause a negative impact to that person's health. Nationwide, there's approximately one sanitarian hired by governmental agencies to handle the complaints and the health and the well-being of about 14,000 residents. The types of establishments that we're really going to be dealing with in this presentation pretty much run the gamut of everything that serves food and beverages. That may be full-service restaurants where it's a large dining facility where they do very complex food preparation, lots of heating and thawing and cooling of foods. It may entail just limited service restaurants, which maybe just serve pizzas or microwave sandwiches at a bar. It may be just beverage-only locations where all they do is serve soda and beer from taps or canned or bottles. We're also going to be dealing with temporary restaurants, which are food service events that are set up for a very limited time, no more than 14 days at any given location. And we're also going to talk a little bit about retail food establishments, which includes not only large grocery stores, but also smaller convenience-type stores. The legal authority for inspection by the counties in Wisconsin is actually derived from the state statute 254, which gives the state the background to enforce environmental rules. More specifically, we license and inspect the retail stores under Chapter ATCP 75, which is part of the Wisconsin Administrative Code that deals specifically with retail food, and also Chapter 11 of the Winnebago County Code of Ordinances, which adopts the state codes by reference. Restaurants are licensed under a little different code. That is Chapter HFS 196, which is specifically restaurant inspection, and also, again, Chapter 11 of the Winnebago County Code of Ordinance. Beverage-only inspections on those types of facilities are licensed only under the county ordinance. They do not fall under state statute. The inspections are done and the inspectors are trained to follow the Wisconsin Food Code, which is an adoption of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration Code, which is basically a checklist of items and things that need to be inspected for all public food service facilities. The inspection form that's used for these types of inspections is derived again from the Wisconsin Food Code. It's really a checklist of about 81 potential violations, and the sanitarian, as he goes through and does the inspection, is inspected to look at the entire facility and determine whether or not the facility is in compliance, out of compliance, or if a violation or a potential violation was not observed, if it was something that they do not do or it's not applicable, then you mark it as not observed or not applicable. Generally, the assessment and the inspection process can be broken down into three very broad categories. First category is food safety and all aspects of where the food comes from, how it's being handled, where it's being stored, and how it's being served. Secondly, the facility itself, which is the physical surroundings of the location, including the interior, the exterior of the building, sewer, water, and garbage removal and those types of things. The last part of the assessment has to do with the employees and the supervision of those employees. And we'll talk a little bit more specifically about each part of the assessment. For the physical environment, really what we're looking for there is the physical building, the building complaints, the building code violations, the cleanliness and general upkeep and maintenance of that building. We're looking to make sure that there's no insect infestations, no animals in the building, no pest problems. We're looking to make sure that all surfaces are clean and sanitary, both the food and the non-food contact surfaces. We're looking to make sure that that facility has the right types of equipment to do the types of food that they're processing. As an example, if they're doing pizzas, we would expect them to have a pizza oven. If they're doing burgers and fried foods, we would expect they have a grill of some sort, or fryers and those types of equipment. We also want to make sure that they have enough space to be able to do those types of activities that they're looking to do. For example, we wouldn't expect a very small restaurant to be able to do large amounts of catering and very complex food operations because they just don't have the space to do things properly. In addition, we look at the waste disposal. That would be garbage removal, garbage pickup, how they handle their waste oils and other types of organic materials, as well as the recycling. To continue with the physical establishment, we're also looking at the correct equipment for their employees to do their jobs properly. That would mean hand washing locations, supplies there, soap, paper towels. If they have locker facilities, we would look at the cleanliness and the upkeep of that. We're looking at the dishwashing facilities and the correct supplies, the correct concentration of sanitizer, adequate hot and cold water under pressure, those types of items. With the water supply, we are looking at whether they're a municipal system or whether or not they're a well system. If it's a private well, then we're also looking at the well, the installation, the maintenance, and the sampling of that well. Regarding wastewater disposal, again, if it's a municipal system, we're just making sure that it's being done properly. If it needs a holding tank or a septic system, something like that, we would also be inspecting the use and the maintenance of their septic system. Regarding food safety, really the largest part of the assessment has to do with how they're accepting the food, how they're storing it, how they're handling it, what they're doing with it, and how they're serving it to their customers. We're looking at things like the consumer advisory, that meaning that any food product that's being served at that location is not undercooked, it cannot be rare, it has to be done, well done, or the advisory has to be posted, whether it's on a menu, whether it's on the wall, or whether it's verbalized to the customer. Regarding food sources, we're looking to make sure that the food is not coming from home sources. There cannot be any canned foods that are done at home served in that facility. We're also looking to make sure that they're coming from a licensed, certified supplier. So we would expect that most public facilities are generally bringing their foods from a large supplier like Cisco or Kraft or somebody like that, so that they're getting quality food from a quality location, and the food has not been abused, whether it be temperature abuse or something else in transit. In the facility, we are looking at separation of raw foods from cooked foods. We're looking for problems with cross-contamination and drippage from raw items onto ready-to-eat foods, making sure that that doesn't occur, making sure that all of the food products are, again, properly held in storage, so that there is no intermingling and no mixing of problems, especially, again, from raw to ready-to-eat foods. We're also looking at complete separation of all toxics, and that includes cleaning products. So we're looking at things like there's chemical sanitizers, there's soaps, there are bleaches, those type of things being stored separately away from the food products, maybe in another location or at least underneath the food products at the lower levels of the shelving. We're also looking quite often and quite intently at food temperatures. With food that has got to be cooked, we're looking at very specific cooking temperatures to achieve bacterial safety in those foods. Some examples are poultry. We're looking at a minimum of 165 degrees internal temperatures. Obviously, the sanitarians as well as the restaurant operators are using various types of ways to register their thermometers, ways to register their temperatures, whether it be using thermometers or other thermocouples, other types of equipment to check those temperatures. Ground beef and pork, we would expect to maintain 155 degrees. Solid cuts of meat, fish, and then anything else that's cooked, we're looking at a temperature, an internal temperature of 145 degrees. During storage, we're also looking at proper food temperatures. This would be things that would be either out on a salad bar. In their cold holding facilities, we'd be looking at a maximum of 41 degrees Fahrenheit at all times. If it's a hot holding facility where they may have steam tables and soup bars and those type of things set up, we're looking at a minimum temperature of 135 degrees at all times while that food is being served. Along with some of the other temperature violations, we're looking at proper thawing of foods. We're making sure that foods do not go out on the counter and sit for long periods of time. Generally, the recommendation is to allow foods to only be thawed in a microwave as part of the cooking process or in a refrigerator at 41 degrees or less. With cooling of foods that have been heated and are now going to be chilled and put back into cold storage, we're looking to make sure that those foods are dropping temperature from the 135 hot holding down to 70 within the first 4 hours, and then from that 70 degree mark down to the temperature mark of 41 or less within the next 2 hours. So that 6-hour time period must be adhered to, otherwise the food is considered temperature abused and must be discarded. All food, we're looking to make sure that it's in its original container. If the food has had to be removed from its original container, we're looking that it go into a sealed, dated, and labeled container. So it's very clear that the type of food that's being stored in that container, so that anyone can look at it, know when it was prepared, and know what it was. The final piece of the assessment has to do with the employees. As part of this assessment, the employees and the sanitarian will discuss violations that have occurred. They will discuss just how things go on in that facility. And the sanitarian is trying to gauge the knowledge of that food service employee. We would expect that all employees are knowledgeable in their duties and that they've received some type of training. At the same time, the sanitarian is also trying to assess whether or not that employee is free from obvious visible diseases. And the food code addresses some very specifics. If an employee has Shigella, E. coli, Hep A, or Salmonella, that employee is not to be working in the food service and should have told their employee or their employer that that was an issue. Regarding the employer, we look to make sure that there's adequate supervision at all times, that that supervisor takes a responsibility for what goes on in that facility and does understand the overall workings of the facility, does understand the food code, and does understand the implications of the violations that may or may not have occurred. We're also assessing the appropriate use of equipment and hand washing in that facility by all employees. We want to make sure that all employees are following proper hand washing procedures and also that they're doing it at adequate times. We're also looking at glove use and utensil use. And there's a little bit of a misnomer that gloves are required in the food service industry. That is not correct. What is required is that there can be no bare hand contact of a ready-to-eat food product. So if gloves are appropriate, then gloves should be worn. If it's appropriate for the employee to not use gloves and maybe to use utensils, bakery wipes, spatulas, those type of things, that's appropriate as well. So they wouldn't, in those situations, have to use gloves. Regarding the violations that are found, there are some very specific corrective actions and follow-up that occurs. First of all, the inspection standard is 1 inspection per facility per license year. Obviously, more inspections are needed at times, so follow-up inspections are scheduled and or conducted as needed. And quite often the time that the sanitarian gives to do that follow-up inspection depends on the type of violation. If it's a really severe violation, something very critical, we would expect that a corrective action be made immediately during the initial inspection. And then the sanitarian would conduct a follow-up inspection anywhere between 3 and 7 days following to make sure that that corrective action that was done at the time of the first inspection is completed and done satisfactorily. If it is a violation that has to do with maybe having to have somebody come in and do some repair work or having to have a contractor come in and do some building maintenance, Quite often then the sanitarian will give approximately 30 days for follow-up so that the business owner has a little more time to make some of those more permanent building type of corrections. The county does have procedures and policies in place that deal with ongoing violations. Quite often the sanitarian has the authority to conduct as many follow-up inspections as is needed. After several follow-up inspections, there is the ability to require payment of an inspection fee and or a follow-up fee, which in essence is kind of a fine. We also look at other types of stepped enforcement, which may include meeting with supervisory officials, meeting with local building officials to try to address some issues, and ultimately either to suspend or revoke that license or to not allow that facility to get a renewal license at the time that the license has become renewable on July 1st. At this point, that brings us to the end of the inspection process. My contact information is here. If you have if you would like more information or you have more questions regarding the inspection and licensing of public facilities, please give me a call at the health department or send me an email. At this point, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to give us a call at the health department. Thank you.